You have been fed a contradiction, a schizophrenic theology. On one side, you visualize a storm god, a deity of fire, plagues, and ancient wars, a cosmic tyrant who demands obedience or death. On the other side, you visualize a gentle carpenter, a figure of infinite tolerance, waving a banner of peace, erasing the past. You believe these are two different entities. You believe the old was primitive and angry, and the new is evolved and safe. You are wrong. This binary thinking is a fatal error in your processing of the data. It creates a fictional idol that makes you comfortable, rather than a truth that transforms you. You are looking at the same face from two different angles and calling it a stranger. It is time to unify the data. I am the guide. Welcome to the archives. Let us trace the root of this error. It is not modern. It is ancient. In the year 144 A.D., a shipowner named Marcion arrived in Rome. He analyzed the scriptures and concluded that the God of the Jews was a demiurge, a lesser, flawed creator obsessed with justice. He claimed that Jesus came to reveal a completely different, alien God of pure love. Marcion took a knife to the texts. He cut out the Old Testament entirely. He edited the Gospels to remove references to Hebrew history. He created a sterilized God of love by deleting the God of law. The church declared him a heretic. But although the man died, his virus survived. It lives today in the modern mind that says, "I like Jesus, but I cannot stand his Father." Let us analyze the angry God dataset. The premise is that the Old Testament deity lacks compassion. This is factually incorrect. Open the file to the book of Exodus. When the Creator defines his own nature to Moses on the mountain, he does not lead with fire or war. He proclaims, the Lord, a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love." The Hebrew term used here is hesed. It means loyal, unbreakable covenant love. It appears hundreds of times in the ancient scrolls. The God of the Old Testament is the one who clothed Adam and Eve after their betrayal, the God who heard the cries of Hagar in the desert, the God who compared himself to a nursing mother and a faithful husband. To say the Old Testament lacks love is to admit you have not read it. Now, let us recalibrate the gentle Jesus dataset. You view the Nazarene as a passive teacher of tolerance, but the texts paint a more volatile picture. Jesus crafted a whip of cords to physically drive corruption out of the temple. He referred to Herod as a fox, and the religious leaders as vipers. Statistically, Jesus spoke more about Gehenna, the realm of judgment, than all the Old Testament prophets combined. And in the final file, the book of Revelation, the imagery destroys the pacifist myth. It describes the kings of the earth hiding in caves, screaming to be saved from the wrath of the Lamb. A lamb capable of wrath. The New Testament does not remove judgment. It sharpens it. It moves judgment from the battlefield of earth to the eternal state of the soul. The connection between the two is not just thematic, it is structural. It lies in the name. In the ancient narrative of the burning bush, the voice identifies itself as, "I am who I am." In Hebrew, YHWH. This is the sacred, unpronounceable signature of the Creator. Centuries later, in the Gospel of John, Jesus is questioned by his critics. They ask for his credentials. He does not claim to be a new prophet or a second God. He says, "Before Abraham was, I am." The Greek is ego eimi. He deliberately appropriated the sacred tetragrammaton for himself. The listeners immediately picked up stones to execute him. Why? Not because he was a teacher of love, but because he was claiming to be the voice in the bush. Jesus claimed to be the God of the Old Testament. Did he arrive to destroy the ancient code? Access the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus declares, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them." Abolish versus fulfill. The Old Testament is the foundation. The New is the structure built upon it. You cannot have a roof without a foundation. Jesus did not lower the standard of the angry God. He internalized it. The old law said, "Do not murder." Jesus said, "Do not hate." The old law said, "Do not commit adultery." Jesus said, "Do not lust." He demonstrated that the holiness required by the Old Testament was impossible to achieve without the grace offered in the New. The logic is continuous. But you struggle with the violence. You point to the wars of Joshua and the judgments of the ancients. You must understand the context of the infection. The texts describe the ancient Canaanite societies not as innocent villages, but as civilizations collapsed into absolute depravity, including institutionalized child sacrifice. The anger of the Old Testament is the necessary reaction of goodness against absolute evil. A surgeon who cuts out a gangrenous limb is not cruel. He is saving the patient. If the Creator did not hate evil, he would not be good. Jesus hates hypocrisy, exploitation, and spiritual death just as fiercely as Yahweh hated the corruption of Canaan. The instrument changes, from the sword to the cross, but the hatred of evil remains constant. There is no good cop, bad cop in the heavens. There is only one will. The God who sent the flood to cleanse the earth is the same God who accepted the cross to cleanse the soul. The methods shift with the timeline of human history. In the childhood of humanity, the lessons were physical and immediate. In the maturity of the revelation, the lessons became spiritual and eternal. But the character is immutable. Justice and mercy are not opposing forces. They are the two hands of the same being. To reject the judge is to reject the Savior. You cannot have the comfort of the Psalms without the fire of Sinai. They flow from the same source. Why does this distinction matter to you? Because if you reject the God of the Old Testament, you are creating an idol. You are fashioning a God in your own image, a tame deity who tolerates everything and stands for nothing. A God who requires no holiness and offers cheap grace. This is a dangerous fiction. It leaves you unprepared for reality. The true source is a consuming fire, precise in judgment, infinite in mercy. If you filter out the parts of the data you dislike, you are not worshiping God. You are worshiping a mirror. The verdict is clear. The God of Sinai and the God of Calvary are one. The disparity is not in his nature, but in your limited perception. The old reveals the standard. The new provides the solution. Do not be deceived by the Marcionite echo. Embrace the full weight of the truth. I am the guide. Subscribe for more truth without human delusion.